All right, hello and a warm welcome from the International Students and Programs Office. Thank you for joining us as we talk about applying for your U.S. student visa. These pre-arrival webinars are actually a joint initiative from our two offices, the International Students and Programs Office, as well as the Graduate Division. So first, we want to congratulate you on your admission and acceptance to UC San Diego, as well as provide these resources to help you navigate your journey as a new international graduate student at UC San Diego. My name is Grace Fuller. I'm the Manager of International Student Experience and Engagement at the International Students and Programs Office, commonly known as ISPO, and I'll hand it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Swid, and I'm one of the International Student Advisors at the International Students and Programs Office.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shauna Slabiota, and I work in the Graduate Division on Professional Development and Retention Initiatives.
A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. So first, you are in listen-only mode, which means you can hear us, but unfortunately, we can't hear you. So we invite you to submit all of your questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom bar. If for some reason we don't get to answer your question during this webinar, you can also reach out to us via icontact.ucsd.edu. Additionally, we will be recording. So you can see this recording as well as we have our two other webinars that we've done so far up on our website, iwebinars.ucsd.edu. So you can view those two recordings as well as sign up for future recordings for all of our pre-arrival webinars this season. Okay, this is what your Q&A feature will look like. So like I mentioned, we encourage you to submit your questions via this feature. We have disabled the chat, so the Q&A feature will be your primary way for submitting those questions. And as a quick reminder, you can submit your questions throughout our presentation today. So the first half of our presentation will cover some important information in applying for a US visa. And then for the second half of the webinar, we'll dedicate it to open Q&A, but feel free to submit a question whenever it comes up. And with that, I'll hand it over to Shauna from Graduate Division.
Thank you so much, Grace. I would like to remind everyone to log into their accounts at gradapply.ucsd.edu to view your application portal. In a moment, we will share a screenshot of what this page looks like. Be sure to fill out the Statement of Legal Residence form. Most students are admitted provisionally. This should not impact your ability to get immigration documents, but it does mean you will have to provide official documentation, and you can find a list of those documents in your application portal under the section Pending Admissions Documents. And if you have questions about any of these, please email gradadmissions@ucsd.edu, and our staff will help you out. Can we go to the next slide, Grace? Thank you. So this is what your application portal will look like in the system. You can see which forms need to be completed under the Forms section under Status Update on the left of the page. You will also be able to see what documents are still needed to be submitted under the Pending Admissions Documents section. And I also want to call your attention to the bottom right part of the screen where we have it highlighted. This space includes links to a list of checklist items that need to be completed as an admitted student. And so you'll find a lot of information here. This is also where we will post information on orientation activities for new grad students as those are finalized. We are still a little bit in the early stages of that, but once we finalize those plans, you can find that information on the admitted students page. And and I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Shauna, for that helpful information. So now let's go over how to obtain your F1 or J1 visa in order to enter the United States and begin your program of study at UC San Diego. So Gracie, so as an international student, you must have a CVIS form I-20 in order to apply for the F1 visa, or a CVIS form DS-2019 in order to apply for the J1 visa. So whether you are applying for an I-20 or a DS-2019, both can be requested using our online system called the iPortal. We began accepting applications on March 1st, so you are welcome to apply for your I-20 or DS-2019 now if you have not already done so. And the direct link to access iPortal is iportal.ucsd.edu. Now, most students will receive an I-20 or DS-2019 with a September 20th start date. However, we are aware that many students begin their programs of study earlier than this, depending upon your department. For example, you might have a boot camp, or you might have something going on in the summer that you want to arrive earlier for. If you require an earlier start date on your document, you are still able to request this within the iPortal. Please be aware that our processing time is 15 business days for a complete application. So we do recommend that you apply as early as possible to avoid any delays. Once you receive your I-20 or DS-2019, you will then be able to book your appointment at your local US embassy or consulate if appointments are available, which would then allow you to obtain a visa stamp in your passport, which can be used for entry into the United States. If you are unable to secure a visa in time for the start of your program, you might need to consider beginning your program remotely until you're able to get your visa approved. So a little bit more about submitting a request in iPortal. So once you accept your offer of admission in the applicant portal, you have paid your deposit to UC San Diego, you will then receive an invitation email to the Triton checklist a few days later. And it's there that you'll receive instructions to log into iPortal to request your immigration documents. This was the page that Shauna showed us earlier, where there were some links. So when you submit your iPortal application, you'll be asked to submit a copy of your passport, your financial support documents that meet the minimum funding requirements. And please note that the financial support documents must not be older than 6 months, and they can come from your department and or personal or family funds, or it can be a combination of both. And if you visit inewstudent.ucsd.edu, you can find out more information about the minimum funding requirements required to obtain the I-20 or DS-2019. So if you'll be applying for an F1 visa and require a Form I-20, we are able to issue these electronically. So you'll be able to download, print, and sign your document directly from iPortal. However, if you're applying for a J1 visa and need a DS-2019, you will need to have a hard copy, and the iPortal application will ask you for your mailing preference so that we are able to mail out a hard copy of your DS-2019. If you have any questions during this process, we encourage you to reach out to our advisors. We do have specific time slots that are dedicated to newly admitted students, and we're happy to answer any questions that come up. We're here to assist you, so please do reach out. We know that some of this information can be confusing, so just know that we are here to support you. And then we just wanted to share a few additional resources, as we know that COVID-19 has impacted the ability for many students to secure visa appointments and to make travel arrangements to the United States. If you're unable to secure a visa appointment due to limited availability, or you are impacted by current travel restrictions, know that you can begin your program remotely from your home country if needed. You do not need the I-20 or DS-2019 or a valid visa in order to enroll at UC San Diego at this time, but you do need those documents in order to enter the United States. So I wanted to let you know about our website, iupdates.ucsd.edu. This is a great resource for you to see the most up-to-date information about immigration policy updates and anything related to the COVID-19 emergency. And then another great resource that we encourage you to become familiar with is the Return to Learn dashboard. So simply go to returntolearn.ucsd.edu, and you can find information there about the campus efforts to return to in-person teaching and learning in the safest way possible. This is a great page to share with your family members, especially if they're concerned about you traveling to the United States, as the dashboard shows data of UC San Diego students and employees who have been tested for COVID and how many positive cases there are. So as of the data that I looked at yesterday, there's 1 student residing on campus who tested positive, 17 residing off campus who tested positive, and 3 campus employees who tested positive in the last 7 days. So it's a relatively low percentage of positive cases among our campus population. So I encourage you to visit this site frequently to stay updated on the current numbers. And then I think I'll hand it over to Grace to go over some important deadlines and reminders to be aware of over the next couple of months.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes, so as Lisa mentioned, so there are 2 things that you can begin doing now. So one, as highlighted by this webinar, you can begin requesting your visa documents via iPortal. To do so, go to iportal.ucsd.edu. Additionally, if you are planning on traveling to the United States, we encourage you to start applying and looking at housing. If you're interested in living on campus, you can visit hdhgradfamilyhousing.ucsd.edu or the link listed on the screen. Additionally, if you're interested in other housing options, we encourage you to head to iwebinars.ucsd.edu to check out our webinar dedicated to graduate student housing, and that will go over a lot of different options available to you as a graduate student. We also invite you to join us next week as we have our colleagues from Student Health, and we will discuss insurance and immunization requirements as international graduate students. On April 22nd, we'll have a pre-arrival webinar dedicated to SEVIS transfers. So if you are transferring your record, we encourage you to attend. And finally, we will have a new international student orientation in September. Those details are still getting worked out, but you can always head to iorientation.ucsd.edu for more information. Yes, so I highlighted a couple of these pre-arrival webinars on the previous slide, but I also want to call attention to a few more. So on April 28th, we'll have a webinar dedicated to teaching assistantship, or known as TA, and English proficiency requirements. On May 12th, we'll have a webinar covering campus safety. And on May 14th, we'll have a webinar dedicated to student life and getting involved on campus. So like I mentioned previously, all our webinars will be recorded and posted at iwebinars.ucsd.edu. But this link is the same link that you will use to sign up for upcoming webinars. So if you go to iWebinars, you can both view previous webinar recordings as well as sign up for upcoming future webinars. Okay, so that covers a lot of our presentation for today, and we want to dedicate the rest of our time together to answering as many of your questions as we can. Before we begin and open our Q&A session, I just want to remind that for the purposes of this webinar, we will try to answer some common themes, some common questions. But if you have a case-specific question, then we encourage you to reach out to our offices directly. So I've listed 2 email addresses on the screen. So inewstudent@ucsd.edu is a great way for you to reach out directly to the International Students and Programs Office. And gradadmissions@ucsd.edu is a great way for you to reach out directly to Graduate Division. So if you have a case-specific question, or if for some reason we don't get to your question during our open Q&A session, then I encourage you to reach out there. And with that, we will open up our Q&A this morning. We have a lot of good questions already, so we'll begin. And the first question we have is probably, I would think, for Lisa, but both feel free to chime in. So the first question is, can I submit my transcripts once I enter the United States, preferably in August? And actually, Shauna, this might be for you. My apologies.
Yes, so we encourage you to submit any pending documentation, such as a transcript, as soon as you're able to. So for example, if you are currently in a degree program that finishes up in May or June, once you're able to get that transcript or that final documentation that says you've gotten your degree, if you can mail that over the summer, getting it earlier is always nice because our admissions staff gets so many documents, and in order to really just make the process really efficient, we ask you to just submit it as early as you can. That being said, if you submit your transcripts when you enter the United States in August, we will absolutely still accept them. That is definitely an option. But earlier is better if possible.
Thank you, Shauna. All right, our next question is for Lisa. The question reads, I want to change the spelling of my city of birth. I also want to update my preferred name as it is currently a blank field. My I-20 is not yet issued. Can these changes be made right away? And if so, who should I contact?
That's a great question. So it sounds like, so you have not applied for your I-20 in the iPortal yet. And when you do go into iPortal, you do have an option to input some remarks in your application. So you can make sure that the advisor is aware of your request to change the spelling or to input your preferred name. And I think you said the city of birth you wanted to update. So just make sure that you put that in the remarks if the information in your iPortal does not show the correct information. We will process I-20s with the name that's on your passport. So if you want a different name on your I-20 that's not on your passport, you'll need to update your passport. So just know that the I-20 will match what's in your passport. If your I-20 has already been issued and information is not correct on your I-20, you can submit an I-20 amendment request. So that's just another request type in iPortal. So let's say you receive your I-20, you notice information is incorrect, just go back to iPortal and submit an amendment request to make any updates to the information on your document.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Our next question is for Shauna. The question reads, I filled out the decision reply form, but I do not see the statement of legal residence on my form section. Should I wait some time for this to show up?
Yes, so I do want to just say that the statement of legal residence should show up right away after you've accepted admission. However, some of our programs do not require the statement of legal residence. And so it's possible that your program doesn't require it if it is not showing up. However, we have a list of those programs on our admitted students website that shows that talks about the requirements in regards to the statement of legal residence. So on the Graduate Division's website in the admitted student section, I would check that list to see if your program is included. If it says you need a statement of legal residence and you still do not see it, please follow up with our office directly.
Thank you. All right, our next question is for Lisa, and the question reads, will I-20s be sent internationally for visa processes to start?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as of right now, you should be able to use an electronic version of your I-20. So after you submit your application in iPortal, we'll upload a copy of the I-20 where you would be able to download and print it and sign it to bring to your visa appointment. However, if your specific embassy or consulate requires a printed copy for whatever reason, then you are able to request a printed copy of your I-20. So first we would upload an electronic version to your application. But if you need one printed and mailed to you internationally, you would go back into iPortal and submit a replacement I-20 DS 2019 request. And I'll go ahead and drop a link into, I guess in the chat. I think I can drop a link in the chat, right, to everybody. That gives you instructions on how to request a replacement I-20 if you need a hard copy. But you shouldn't need one, but some embassies and consulates might ask you to have one for some reason.
I thank you, Lisa, for also mentioning the chat. I think I will also put a link in the chat to a section of the Graduate Division website. So thank you for that idea.
All right, Lisa, this question is somewhat related. And the question asks, is it okay to just print the form I-20 or will they require a wet signature?
You should be able to just print it, but I would suggest following up with your consulate or embassy directly, as embassies and consulates can vary across the world. So follow up with your local consulate or embassy to see what their specific requirements are. But at this time, they should be accepting electronic I-20s that you should be able to print and sign on your own.
Great. Our next question is also for ISPO. The question reads, I am currently enrolled at a US university and need to transfer my CVIS record. I wasn't sure what to put as my CVIS transfer date on the application and would really like some guidance on that. Additionally, will I need to get a new US visa or will my current F1 visa just be extended?
Great question. So, regarding the date that you should have your CVIS record transferred, you'll want to follow up with your current institution to let them know that you're starting a program at UC San Diego, most likely in the fall. Typically, you would request that your record be transferred sometime after you finish your program at the current school you're at and before you begin your study at UC San Diego. So at your current school, you have a 60-day grace period from your program end date. So let's say your program ends June 15th. You would have 60 days to have your record transferred to UC San Diego. It depends also if you're planning to apply for OPT. If you are going to be on OPT, once your CVIS record is transferred to UC San Diego, that means that your OPT is then finished. You would then lose your employment authorization. So that's another thing to take into consideration. So I would suggest following up with your current institution to find out, what steps you need to take to have them transfer your CVIS record to UC San Diego. But again, it would be some date in between when you finish your program at your current school and before you begin your program at UC San Diego. And then take into consideration that we do have that 15-day processing time. So you want to make sure that you apply at least 2 to 3 weeks before, I would say at least 3 weeks. 2 weeks would be really pushing it. 3 weeks before you begin your program of study at UCSD. And our deadline to apply for I-20s is August 1st. It is okay if your record is transferred after August 1st, however. So it's not a problem if your record is transferred August 30th or September 1st. And then I think you had another question about your visa. So when you have your CVIS record transferred, you're still on F1 status. If you are planning to remain in the United States, it is okay if your visa expires because the F1 visa or the J1 visa, it's an entry document only. So it doesn't give you the status to be in the United States. It's just an entry document. So if you're transferring your record and then you're going to depart, you're going to leave the United States, you'll want to make sure that you have a valid visa in order to come back into the United States. However, if you're in the United States and you have no plans to depart, it is okay for you to remain here during the transfer period. You don't need to renew the visa, again, unless you are planning to depart and re-enter.
Thank you so much. So much good, helpful information. I just want to do a quick reminder. I do see some participants raising their hand. And I just want to remind you that we will primarily be answering questions through the Q&A feature. So if you do have a question, I just encourage you to submit that as a text question through the Q&A feature listed on your Zoom menu bar. All right, our next question is for Lisa, and the question reads, where would I get information on my program's start date?
So the majority of students would receive a fall term start date, which would be September 20th. However, it's always good to follow up with your department to find out if there's any early start program or boot camp or some other required sessions that are required before the fall quarter start. So follow up with your department or your graduate coordinator to confirm what your specific start date is.
And then our next question is it better to apply for an F1 or a J1 visa?
That's really situational. So if more than 50% of your funding comes from a government, like a home government source, then the J1 visa would be the appropriate category for you. The majority of UCSD students are on the F1 visa. One of the benefits with the J1 is if you have a spouse and they want to work in the United States, the J1 does give a J2 dependent the eligibility to work in the United States. So sometimes students do prefer the J for that reason. Whereas the F1 category, if you have an F2 dependent, if you have a spouse that's coming with you, they are not eligible to work. So what I'll do is I'm going to drop another link in the chat that gives you an explanation of the differences between the two categories. And hopefully that will help you to figure out which category you're eligible for and which one fits you best.
I'm going to give Lisa a little bit of a break to actually drop that helpful information in the chat, but understandably, most of our questions this webinar are focused towards ISPO regarding applying for your visa. So makes total sense. Yeah, Shauna.
There is a question that I wanted to address. So the question is, if my PhD, and actually I might have to get you, Lisa, for the second half, so sorry about this. If my PhD program is fully funded, what do I need to ask to my department concerning the financial support for applying for the F1? So if your program is fully funding you, your admissions documents should have the information regarding that funding included. So so when I did see this question, it sort of stood out to me because if your program has said that they will fund you, but you do not have a letter that has the specifics in regards to those amounts, then I would encourage you to follow up with the department right away, because the department the department should be familiar with this process. They can provide you with some documentation that, again, includes specific amounts for the academic year to make sure that you meet those minimums that are required for your visa, your international the documents that you need. So I just would really encourage you to follow up with the department right away. And if there's anything else that I forgot, Lisa, in regards to financial support from the department and letters, please let me know.
Yeah, no, what you shared is really helpful. And then I just wanted to add that I dropped 2 links in the chat as well. The first link just links to what the minimum funding requirements actually are in order for us to issue the I-20 or DS 2019. And then the second link is what kind of financial documentation is accepted. And then I guess now might be a good time to also note that for an F1 for us to issue the I-20, we need to see a minimum of 9 months of funding, unless it's a specific 11 or 12 or 15-month program. For the J1, we need to see funding for the duration of the program. So if it's a 3 or 5 year program, you would have to show funding for the entire duration. So that's one of the other differences between the F and J1 categories.
That's great information. Thank you. Our next question reads, is there any provision for expediting the I-20 process for early start programs like the MSBA so that people are able to book the visa appointments early, since there are very limited interview slots available?
Yeah, that's a great and common question. We do our best to process as quickly as possible. So our 15-day processing time, we're pretty good at making that happen. If you have an urgent request and it needs to be processed sooner than that, you're always welcome to send us an email or contact us over to Zoom to explain your situation. But just know that there are only so many of us in the office and lots of requests. So we'll do our best to expedite, but the best advice I can give you is just to apply early and give us and yourself enough time to get the documents processed in order for the visa to be hopefully issued in time for entry. But yeah, if there's a specific reason you really need it done earlier, like you have an appointment in 2 days, and you're on this webinar, so you didn't forget to apply for your I-20, but you can always contact us and make that request, and we'll do everything we can to get the documents issued in a timely fashion.
This next question might apply to both offices. So the question reads, I didn't receive an email that contains the Triton checklist, and my department didn't require a deposit. Have I missed something? Just FYI, I've already made my account to access iPortal.
So from the graduate division side, there is a link in the chat to our admitted students website, and that does list items that admitted students need to complete as part of this, as part of joining UC San Diego and starting your graduate program. And I can put the link again if we need it, but it will mention things such as setting up your email. It talks about the immunization requirements. I also want to just take a moment. I think there was a question that was in the Q&A about immunization, and I just wanted to take a moment to say that we have a webinar coming up that will go into a lot more detail about student health and immunization requirements. Thank you, Grace. I couldn't remember if that was next week or the week after. So a week from today, we will be going into a lot of detail and answering a lot of questions about this topic. So if you're able to join us, I would really encourage you to do that live if you can. It will also be recorded. So yes, I would just say to look at the admitted students page on our website for all of the tasks that you will need to complete. And that's it from the graduate division side. I'm honestly not sure about a deposit. I think that was part of the question as well, Grace. Sorry to jump back on. Is that a department specific requirement that Grace or Lisa that you know of, or would that be something maybe like a CVIS fee? Is that considered a deposit?
I'm not entirely sure. From what I understand, once you submit the deposit, then that might change the status of the student code, which gives the student access to iPortal, I think. But it sounds like the student who asked the question actually does have access to iPortal. So that's a good thing. So if you have access to iPortal, then go ahead and submit your document, your request, and we will do our part to process your request, and then go ahead and follow up with your department to see if there's any, if there's any loose ends that maybe there is something that you're missing. But yeah, definitely follow up with your department about the checklist.
Great. Our next question is for Lisa. The question reads, can I travel to the United States a few days before the start date mentioned on my I-20? For example, 1 week before September 20th.
Yes, absolutely. So you're able to enter the United States 30 days before the program start date on your I-20. That is if you are a newly admitted student and entering the US for the first time in this visa category. If you're a transfer student and transferring from one institution to another, then you're able to enter before the program start date. You can depart and re-enter between the transfer period. But as a new student with the program start date of September 20th, you're able to enter 30 days before the program start date.
This next question is also for you, Lisa. So it says that I started my forms on iPortal, but I am not able to enter again. And it says that my account has expired. What should I do?
That's interesting. I would suggest sending us an email, inustudent@ucsd.edu. It sounds like maybe you might have been accepted last year or at a previous time, and we might need to do something on the technical side of things to give you access again. So this is a specific case question, so please do reach out to us, contact our office by email or by Zoom, and we can certainly help you figure this out.
Our next question is for Shauna, and the question reads, if I might need to start my program remotely, can I still get paid?
So I want to start by saying that the situation that's mentioned in this question happened to multiple students this past fall 20, where they were studying and remotely. They were not able to attend the US, but they were still able to receive funding. Now, I will say that it's best to work with your department in regarding the details of that. So I can speak generally and say that we have mechanisms in place to provide support at a sort of a university or graduate student level, and for the rest of campus, or in the whole campus, I should say. But I would definitely encourage you to reach out to your program for program-specific information.
All right, our next question is for Lisa, and the question reads, what are our options if there are no visa appointments available because of the pandemic? How could ISPO help us?
Yeah, I know that this is a hard question. If there's no appointments available, then I would suggest reaching out to your department and keep the line of communication really open to inform your department that you're not able to get a visa in order to enter in time. And the goal is really that you'd be able to start your program remotely. And then once you get your visa secured, then you would hopefully then be able to enter for the next quarter. But I would suggest, really just communicating to your department about your difficulty in securing a visa, and that you're not able to enter in time. Keep reviewing the State Department's website to see what the visa wait times are for your local consulate or embassy. We do expect that fall quarter would mostly be in person. So again, it's really, really important to communicate directly with your department if you're unable to enter, so that accommodations can be made for you. And what we can do is just, continue to, again, keep the line of communication open with us as well, so that we can communicate with faculty in your department as well to let them know about, we are well aware, we are definitely aware of the limited visa appointment availability in many parts of the world. And so our support is really to continue to communicate with departments about this difficulty that you have in securing your appointments and entering the US. But the goal, I think, is really that you would be able to start remotely so that you're able to start your program and make progress towards your degree.
All right, this next question is also for Lisa, and the question reads, do I need to wait for my email to apply for the Form I-20?
No, I think you're talking about your UCSD email account, probably. You shouldn't have to. So if you go to iPortal, you can see if you're able to log in. As long as you accepted your offer of admission and paid the deposit, then you should have access to iPortal. So you shouldn't have to wait for your email address. But if you log in and notice that you don't have access, then give us a shout, send us an email or by Zoom and let us know, and we can help you move forward with that.
Great. Our next question reads, do I have to wait to get my I-20 to be able to schedule an appointment at the U.S. consulate?
You need the CVIS ID in order to schedule your appointment. So yes, you don't need the physical hard copy, but you do need to have the CVIS ID, which is on the I-20.
Great. And our next question reads, can I request an I-20 with my previous passport and attend the visa interview with a new one?
You should be able to. I assume that hopefully, the name on your passports would remain the same. So if there's been any updates to your name at all, any updates to your biographical information, like if any information on your previous passport was incorrect, you just want to make sure that your I-20 matches the biographical information on your passport. But yeah, you should be able to do that. That should not be a problem.
All right, our next question reads, is also a question about an I-20. So would the cost in the I-20 form be based on 9 months or 12 months for PhD students?
For PhD students, you would need to show 9 months. That's considered an academic year, so 9 months of funding. And I'll go ahead and drop one more link in the chat about the funding.
All right, as Lisa is dropping that link in the chat, Shauna, are there any questions that stick out to you?
Yes, thank you, Grace. I'm going through them. There was a question that I wanted to address about early start dates and health insurance. So if your department is having, if your academic program or your department is having a boot camp or some sort of orientation transition period for which you need to have an earlier start date, I won't say with every single program, but oftentimes those programs will include health insurance that they will that they facilitate that process so that you're able to get health insurance early, because you are being asked to be on campus to start your program early. Now, that being said, it is best to confirm with your program or your department just to make sure. But I would say in the majority of cases, the health insurance would be included. So I did want to address that piece. And yeah, thank you.
All right, our next question is a bit lengthy, but I do think that it might apply to a few students here. So for a student who deferred their admission from fall 2020 to then spring 2021 to then fall 2021, for this student in their I-20, the start date has changed while the end date has not changed. Currently, the I-20 has a start date of September 2021 and the end date of June 2022, totaling 3 quarters. While other students in this student's program, MS in CS, may have an end date such as June 2023. So some questions pertaining to this case are, is it possible to change the end date? If not, will it affect my visa process? And will there be any other complications in the future, for example, while applying for an I-20 extension, et cetera?
Yeah, this is a really great and important question. So a follow-up question for you would be, have you been studying remotely and making progress towards your degree? If so, then it's correct that your end date should not change, because if you've been enrolled for a year, then your program end date would actually remain the same. Even though you haven't entered the United States, you've still been making progress towards your degree. If you officially deferred, meaning you did not begin your program of study, and fall 2020 will be the first time that you begin your program of study, then I would suggest following up with our office so that we can adjust the end date on your I-20. And then I'll drop another link in the chat just with instructions on how to apply for the I-20 extension. End dates are a little bit complicated for our office just for this particular year, because it's been confusing whether students are inside the United States, outside the United States, whether you've been enrolled for 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters. So when you apply for the I-20 extension, it actually gets routed to your department, and your department would then confirm that the end date that you are requesting is the appropriate end date. And that then allows us to update your I-20 in a way that's correct. We've been really hesitant to adjust the end date just because of the confusion of whether you're making progress towards your degree. It's really something that you and your department need to confirm is correct before we want to put that end date on your I-20. So I'll go ahead and drop a link in the chat with the instructions on how to apply for the I-20 extension. I think there was a follow-up question, but was there a second part to that question, or did I answer that well enough? If you remember, Grace. If not,
I think you answered it. And for the student that submitted the question, if there is an additional piece that you would like us to cover, please feel free to submit it through the Q&A, and we'll try to get to that as well. And then as Lisa is dropping that link in the chat, Shauna, I also wanted to reach out to you to see if there were other questions.
Yes, I did have there was a question that stood out to me, not to put more on my colleagues' plates here, but the student's asking about, or I'm sorry, the student says, I have received the nomination letter from my department, and that contains information about financial support. And then there's an official letter in the application portal, but this doesn't talk about financial support. So I think the question is about including the letter in their I-20 application. And I just wanted to start off by saying that this is very common. Actually, I think this would be the case, I think, for every student who's receiving financial support, because the support so often comes from your department. You're getting a department fellowship, or you are going to be working as a teaching assistant in that department. It's really, the funding is really, it's finalized, or it's confirmed at the sort of department level. And then the official letter, which should be coming from our graduate dean, that's a letter that wouldn't include the financial support, because like I said, oftentimes you're working in your department, or you're getting support directly from your department. So I think this is a very common scenario. I just want students to know that. But the question, I guess, about the I-20 application and how that plays into it, I'm going to ask Grace or Lisa to maybe touch upon that point, because I do think it's probably a question that a lot of students have.
And so if your nomination letter does specify the amount of funding that you are receiving, then that should be enough for us to process the I-20. If it does not mention funding, then we would need to see some other form of financial support in order to issue the I-20. So if you have any communication with your department, and just, you could send them the link that I put in the chat that specifies the minimum funding requirements. You can always communicate that to your department and say, please make sure that it shows this minimum amount of funding in order for my I-20 to be issued. And yeah, but again, as long as it shows the minimum amount on the nomination letter, then we would accept that as a form of funding.
There's something else that I did want to mention. So I just recently confirmed with one of my colleagues that some programs do require a deposit and some do not. So there have been a few different questions about paying a deposit, or individuals who were not asked to pay and maybe wondering about that process. So I did just want to confirm that it is program specific, and it's best to work with your department or program to get the details of that.
Thank you, Shauna. So for our next question, this is for Lisa, and it reads, for my I-20, do we provide separate statements for savings accounts and fixed deposit accounts?
You can. So yeah, we can accept a savings account or a fixed deposit account. You have the opportunity to submit both. So it's really up to you which form of funding you prefer to put in your application. But yeah, maybe I'll drop the link in the chat one more time just about the different forms of funding that we do accept.
Shauna, I know you just highlighted some questions, but as Lisa's doing that, have any more popped up?
Not at the moment. I'm going through, and thank you for those of you putting in questions. There's a lot. We are trying to get to them as quickly as we can. But not at the moment. Oh, actually, yes. So I think we haven't discussed families much yet in this session so far. So can we maybe touch upon spouses or children and the process of getting these family members' documents?
Yeah, so if you have family members that will be with you during your program of study at UC San Diego, in iPortal, it will ask you, do you have any dependents? And as long as you answer yes, it will then take you down the application route of asking, the biographical information of your dependents. It will ask for the passport page of your dependents and either a marriage certificate or a birth certificate. So yeah, you can absolutely apply for an I-20 or DS-2019 for your dependents, and you would then use those documents to make your visa appointments just like you would for yourself.
Wonderful. Lisa, our next question reads, I have just received my I-20. Are there other documents required for my F1 visa?
Yes, and I think the last 2 or 3 links before, let's see, I put another link in the chat. Let me see if I can find it. Oops. Yeah, so for your visa appointment, you'll need to have your passport, your I-20. You would want to have the proof of funding. And then just know that during your visa appointment, you want to be able to show proof of ties to your home country if possible. Just know that the F1 and J1 visa are non-immigrant visas. So during your interview, you don't want to, share that you have plans to move to the United States permanently and apply for a green card. And even though that might be your eventual intention, it's important to know the difference that with the F1 or J1 visa, it's non-immigrant intent. So it's important to show that you're planning to come to the United States for your program of study and then return home and share what you've learned. But I'm going to go ahead and look for that link that I can share with you that discusses how to prepare for your visa interview and the specific documents that are required for your interview. That way you have it, something that you can refer back to.
Grace, I did want to go ahead and talk about the UCSD password and email address and UC San Diego accounts. There are a few questions. It looks like a couple people may have received some sort of error or some sort of issue when they try to set up their accounts. So I did just want to go ahead and put a link into the chat. And so when it comes to student accounts, emails, this would really be our our technology department, information technology department, that would be able to troubleshoot that for you and would be able to help you sort of get access and figure out what the issue is. And so I'm including a link. It's kind of a long one, but this will provide you, if you are having issues, this will show you some of the sort of that, making sure that all the steps are included, and that also helps you figure out at what step you're getting tripped up. And then at the bottom, there's also contact information that you can follow up directly with our information technology staff.
Thank you, Shauna. All right, Lisa, our next question reads, if I am transferring my CVIS record and I'm currently outside of the United States, will I need a travel signature for my new I-20 to re-enter the US?
Yes, but know that when we do process the transfer I-20, you'll have a travel signature on the third page of your I-20. So you don't have to, that's not a separate request. The I-20 that we issue to you will have the travel signature on it.
All right, our next question reads, can I receive an ITIN or ITIN before coming to the US?
Good question. I'm not sure about that. Do you know, Shauna?
That is a good question. I'm trying to think of the steps involved. So I think something that is maybe a little confusing to me is, before the COVID-19 pandemic, I probably would have said that this would be something you would do after arriving in the United States. And I think what might be confusing is possibly we set up a different process because we did have so many students who were studying remotely this past fall. So honestly, I'm not sure. I would probably, in this situation, again, ask the student to follow up directly with their department or program to clarify, and they would probably have additional information that I don't.
I just dropped 2 links in the chat related to ITIN, so there might be an answer in there, but it would take some reading of these documents to find that answer to that. But hopefully somewhere in this ITIN information from the IRS, there might be an answer there.
And just a quick time check, we are approaching the end of our time together for this webinar, so this may be our last question. But the question reads, it might be for both of our offices, is it possible to defer my admission to fall 2022 if I am not able to book a visa appointment?
So I can speak from a little bit more of the academic side. And I would like to start by saying there were quite a few students who had an original admission date of fall 20 who chose to defer to fall 21, and we definitely understand that was necessary in some students' situations. However, if you have deferred once already, we would not allow a second deferral. at that time, you would have to reapply, unfortunately, because too much time has passed since we received your documents the first time, and we would want to have updated documentation to admit you. Now, that being said, if you are being admitted for fall 21 for the first time, a deferral is certainly possible. I would recommend talking to your academic department first and starting there and letting them know of your that there's a possibility of a deferral, and that's really where the process begins. So I would follow up directly with your academic program. And then Lisa, I don't know if you want to touch upon the visa question.
Yeah, so it depends on where you are in your application for an I-20. So if you've already submitted an I-20 to our office and we've issued one to you, then you would then submit an I-20 amendment request in order for us to change the start date on your I-20. However, if you have not started the I-20 application process yet, then you would submit the new admit I-20 request for fall 2022. So depending upon, where you are in your application, if you've already made your decision to defer or not, you would just have to submit a request in iPortal to make sure that you have the most up-to-date I-20 for the time that you actually intend to begin your studies.
Thank you so much to both Lisa and Shauna for just that wealth of information. So we did try to get through as many questions as we could today, but you all submitted a lot of great questions. So again, if we weren't able to answer your question today, we hope that you will reach out to our offices directly. So iNewStudent at ucsd.edu is a great way to get in touch with the International Students and Programs Office, and grad admissions at ucsd.edu is a great way to reach out to Graduate Division. We do have some more upcoming pre-arrival webinars that we hope you'll join us for, but this is the close of our webinar today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.